Welcome to episode 18. And today's episode is actually a podcast, but not today's episode. There's been so many episodes just from today. Anyway, today's podcast is going to be about something that I was working on yesterday, and I kind of continued working on it today because I realized that this little quote unquote project actually can help me career-wise too, because I actually did end up kind of talking about it a little bit in my portfolio that I have, um, that I put on my resume. So, people who do look at my resume would actually have access to this little mini project thing that I've been working on. So this little thing happened because of my a little brain dump that I did. And it kind of started off with me being absolutely overwhelmed with what's been going on with America, right? And, at some point, because of what's been going on, I actually created a second Instagram account to, distract myself and kind of make myself feel a little better about just life in general because it was starting to get really overwhelming. So, yeah. So I kind of went off about how I was feeling about how things are going because it was absolutely driving me insane. So, I like every time that I saw something insane that was happening, I would kind of think to myself, I could fix this. I think I could actually fix this. And during this brain dump, I kind of started to compare and contrast. Actually, there's more contrast than actual compare, but between matriarchy and patriarchy, and kind of how it has affected the world that we live in. And I kind of was going off about how, because of what the basis of each kind of society is, like that kind of is the reason for why one would do better than the other. Even though in the brain dump I did mention this, but like even though I guess an example of matriarchy would be, the Barbie movie because it was a movie that kind of compared the two. And I loved the idea behind having like comparing both patriarchy and matriarchy, but I don't think Barbie did matriarchy justice because when I was talking to Chat about this, yes, Chat has been involved in this process because I feel like it's a great tool to go have like a good back and forth. So the way that I kind of came up with this whole like new society because that's what it was. And by the way, I called this project called like I called it Playing God because in a way that is kind of what I'm doing. It's kind of like redesigning the world if it were designed with a matriarchy. So that is kind of like the basis of the project, right? So when I was talking to Chad about it, I kind of mentioned like what my thoughts were of like how a matriarchal society would be like and how people would react and kind of be in that society, right? And I've also noticed that chat tends to agree with everything that I say. So for this conversation, I was just like, you know what? But also like, well, you're telling me what you think about my idea of a matriarchal society. Also be the devil's advocate. So we kind of had a back and forth where like I'll say my points and then chat will agree with what I said and then also play devil's advocate. And the next round, I would go through whatever chat said as the devil's advocate and I would kind of respond to it and see how I would fix that, right? And we kind of had that back and forth until chat didn't give me a devil's advocate response. So let's actually get into it. So, the different categories that we're going to go through is the foundations of this quote unquote, it called it a soft reset society. Yes, I did use chat to help me make the quote unquote agenda for this podcast. So, yeah. So the scenario, not scenarios. The categories are foundations of the soft reset society. That's what I'm calling this series, so I guess that's where the soft reset comes from. And I mean, it is coming from that period and time of my life, so that makes sense. And the next one is governance and power structure, and then education and upbringing, work and economy, culture and values, and then environment and tech, and then my role in this society, or like how I could make it come true, like kind of like my connection to this society to my actual life. Um, so let's get started. So the foundation, again, it's a matriarchal society, but the way that I kind of wrote it wasn't to replace patriarchy, but it was to really like rewrite like the power hierarchy. So, because like it'll be like based off of like the leadership would be based off of care, clarity, and consequence. And this kind of society would allow for actual people who are emotionally regulated. Like even though that is the bare minimum for which people should have, because you know you're supposed to learn how to regulate yourself in multitude of ways, but emotionally a lot of people don't have that like regulated. So in this society, it is powerful to be emotionally regulated. And honestly, it is like powerful in this society, but like it'll be more of a norm in that society. And then this society is big on accountability culture without having an ego. Um, and then also it is based off of both logic and emotional literacy and like how powerful that can be. And honestly, I feel like with those two like working together, we would have a society that would never crumble. Or maybe not never crumble, but like, you know, crumble, but in a very like not mature per se, but like what's the word that I'm thinking of? But like very evolved. Uh yeah. And then the next the next topic is governance and power structure. So this, instead of a supreme leader kind of situation, it'll be more of a council-based leadership, and it'll basically be like group leadership, where, for example, I'll use like a group project. So instead of having, because like when, okay, I'm taking project management and product management, and you know there's team dynamics that are that we use, right? So, and one of the roles that are there in a team is the PM, the project manager, right? uh I mean, like, I think in a team where everyone is a leader in their own way, um then I guess, yeah, I mean, I think this kind of like reflects the kind of leadership that I am, like the type of leader that I am. I feel like in a group setting, that everyone in the group is a leader because they all are like they're like the project is usually, split into like everyone has their own role and they are the leader of that role. So sometimes, maybe during this one step, one person takes charge. While in the next step, maybe whoever was in charge for the previous step, they kind of work with this person that is quote unquote in charge of the next step. And like based off of that, you kind of like build on each other and not only become better people, probably even have like a better product of whatever the project was. That is the kind of leadership that I can definitely see. Basically, a community where governance is based off of valid like communication, like very good communication. Um, yeah. And then when it comes to like, in an actual government, there are going to be elections and stuff like that. So the elections would probably be based off of um, their impact over their image. So again, this really is based off of if you're actually qualified and not if you br built a brand that makes you seem like you're qualified or you have a persona that feels too perfect to be true. Um, and also the kind of like power structure is the type like the leader would, so I feel like when people think of leaders, they're usually like the top person that makes all the decisions, right? And they are the highest rank. But and I feel like people do kind of have that kind of mindset in the society that we live in. Like if you have like a a highly viewed position in like any organization, like I feel like people would automatically be like, okay, yeah, I've done all of these things to prove myself that I am qualified to be at the top of blah blah blah. So after I am at the top, I don't need to do anything else. I am the best version of myself, which is honestly not true because you could obviously always like be better. So I think in this society, um, the leaders would take time to actually step back and reflect because you could be at the highest position but be at like the lowest level of leadership or like your potential in being a leader, if that makes sense. That sounded very weird. Like, what I'm trying to say is you're at the highest position of your organization or whatever, right? But then like people like everyone has potential, right? And when you get to a certain role, right? There's always room to grow, basically, right? And so like this society kind of thrives off of that. So like no matter like every like let's say again in a organization that has like a certain hierarchy, right? You start at point zero and you move your way up to the top, right? And as you're moving on each level, you become better, not just like at the job, but like as like you also become like a better person. So like by the time that you get to the top, you probably would be a completely like different person. Like you would have absolutely like evolved from when you started, but like even though when looking back, you were definitely different from the person that started, there are still like multiple opportunities to be able to become even better. That is the kind of like leadership, I guess, would be in the society. Yeah. And then the next topic is education and upbringing. So again, in education, you will be taught about emotional regulation, because that is what you should be taught when you're a child, especially when you're like maybe like a toddler, because I feel like it starts there and like once you have a strong foundation, it'll kind of like build up, right? And yeah, I feel like you would probably maybe even have like a class about that. Basically a class where it's time for you to be able to reflect and stuff like that. Like that will obviously be taught along with like the other subjects like math, science, English. I feel like English and maybe like history, those might kind of tie in with emotional regulation and in a way to like be analyzing the people that like literature is talking about and then history like the past and kind of like analyze them emotionally. Yeah. And then being able to heal, like maybe exactly like having um like not only will kids be analyzing like the past and people's words, I guess, and seeing how that ties to like emotions and stuff like that, you will everyone I feel like everyone has to heal in some way. 'Cause life gives you like obstacles and that could result in trauma. So like, you would have to heal it as best as possible and in an educational environment, it will probably be a safe place to allow you to be able to actually heal. And in this society, creativity would be seen as intelligence because it's, I feel like that makes me think of the difference between um, like being smart and like having wisdom. Because it's like you can have all the information, but the way that you're sharing it is like being able to be creative with it. Like that is definitely like you have more intelligence in that sense because of the creativity. And then when it comes to gender roles and stuff like that, that won't really exist. It would probably be just based off of what you're interested in and, if you enjoy doing it. So certain tasks don't feel like a burden and you'll actually get it done. Um, yeah, so that is education and upbringing. And then the next is work and economy. So we kind of live in a hustle kind of culture because we tend to overwork ourselves, which evidently can have some negative uh, repercussions. And in this society, it'll you'll actually have work-life balance. Like yes, it is preached all the time because it's something that sounds amazing, right? And you know, in this society, it actually happens. That sounds like I'm throwing shade at today's society. I might be just a little bit, but you'll kind of see why. Um, and then especially because I'm an engineer, so there are going to be boundaries around innovation. I mean, there are, but like in some ways, yes, like there are heavy boundaries because there needs to be heavy boundaries. But in like other ways, there isn't like strict boundaries. Like oh, because okay, one of the quotes that chat gave me for innovation with boundaries is just because we can doesn't mean we should. And the first thing that I think of, the absolute first thing that I think of is Jurassic Park. Just because we can doesn't mean that we should. And I guess, Jurassic Park is a great example of innovation having weak boundaries or basically no boundaries at all. But, and I think this kind of society, especially when it comes to like innovation and stuff like that, it'll be very intentional innovation. And, when you're in an innovative space, burnout is possible. And in this society, you will you will realize that burnout is not it's not the issue with the individual. It's, the issue of this system. And you can, wow, I was about to make this sound like it's a medical issue. But like, in this society, there are chances that you will push yourself because you feel like you have to, right? And there could be external pressures that we don't realize. 'Cause these external pressures do exist, which is why it is um an actual issue with the system, which is why burnout is very popular in today's society. So, in the society, like if someone does go through burnout, I feel like this society will be able to give people space and the resources to be able to kind of come back to like your full potential or like your full self. It'll like think about it like I forgot what it's called. But like in games when you have like hearts like for lives but like not really like health points there that's what I'm thinking of. Well, yeah. Like you'll have as you're like working, right? Like you're burning up your health points, and then you come to a point where you're like very, very low. You're at like 10%, and that's when you're in burnout, right? Like, this society would allow you to stop, take a step back, and do whatever you need to be able to get more health points, to be able to perform better. And I feel like if, the world did work like that, we would probably be in a completely different place. Uh, in terms of innovation, but also in terms of like um the state of the climate and like the environment and stuff like that. I am gonna go back to the power structure because speaking of the environmental impact, if you really think about it, because a lot of the times like one of the main reasons that we are going through global warming is because we've done things and we've kind of we'll do something that will like have a great impact in a negative sense that will kind of, affect the future generations. And a lot of the times, every time that happens, we kind of go, oh, whatever, the next generation will figure it out and how to fix that. So we keep like, again, basically procrastinating fixing, or like at least helping the environment not die, essentially. So in this society, because decisions are based off of impact. So if someone does, like for example, in an innovative space, let's say you are working on a certain product or device that ends up hurting the planet, right? And I feel like in this um kind of society, you could go to that could turn to like a lawsuit, right? So what would end up happening is you would kind of when you go into the trial, you would it would be the kind of environment where you are able to own up to the mistake that you made because again, there's this is based off of accountability. So you are accountable for your impact because you understand that even though you weren't trying to, because intention is not an excuse. Like even though you were not intending to do the damage, you still caused it. So you will figure out a plan on how to actually reverse the negative impact that you created. And with that kind of thinking, or like a system of thoughts, there are chances that the world would be in a much, much better place. The next, oh yeah, oh wow, that was perfect. Actually, the next bullet point was eco-capitalism, where it's wealth built from impact and healing, which is kind of what I just talked about. Um, the next section is culture and values. So so in the world that we live in, there are certain characteristics. Okay, the things that are considered as masculine are basically taught as not feminine. So if there's a certain thing that's tied to femininity, masculinity will be like, yeah, we're not that. That is basically what masculinity is based off of. So in this society, uh, the things that are considered as feminine are seen as like a good thing, and so are things that are seen as masculine. And there would be like there probably wouldn't be, or there would be like a minimal amount of toxic femininity and masculinity. But I feel like if it's like very minimal, like there will be people out there that will try to help you realize how toxic it is, since we have this society is based off of accountability. Again, there is obviously a little bit of a trend with the accountability thing. Um, yeah. And then um again, since there are chances that this society probably wouldn't go through war because you have healthy adult conversations, it can be seen as softness. And like softness is not submission, it is strategy because you're having that conversation. And sometimes the world can make you mad, and instead of suppressing the anger, you talk about it. Again, another trend you're probably noticing. And since in the society that we live in, status is a form of like currency, quote unquote currency, right? But in this society, uh, community care is kind of seen as like a form of, not form of power, but like in a way it is status, because like being able to provide that kind of care kind of shows that you are a good person that can, give you brownie points in society, but like in a non-toxic way. And this kind of society would be the kind of society where people are not rushed. So it allows for people to be able to actually rest and take care of themselves so they can move on when they truly feel ready and don't have to like go back to quote unquote fix themselves. Uh, and then the next one is the last one, technically, the last category for this, which is the environment and technology. Again, it is probably going to be uh, ecotech will probably be prioritized because again, understanding the impact that we make, especially environmentally, so there are chances that we would be very advanced in terms of green technology, and hopefully this is more of a fantasy on my part, but like being able to befriend animals. But that's just me. But I feel like a lot of people actually have that. But anyway, and then AI and technology are used as tools and not weapons. And an example of that is me having chat actually helped me with it. Because knowing myself, I'm the type of person who can just talk and talk and talk, and it'll be all over the place. Like they'll vaguely be connected, but like it would be hard for me to put it in, like, make it more organized. So the only reason that I've been able to make this um quote unquote cheat sheet for this podcast is because of chat. Because I had talked about a lot of things and I would not have known how to organize it. And chat helped me organize it. Like they're still my thoughts, but it's organized better for me to be able to share it with other people, like I am right now. Yeah. And there would also be an emotional impact of innovation. So there would be, which means that there would be a lot of intention behind the innovation because it would make sure that there wouldn't be a lot of a negative impact when it comes to innovation. Because a lot of the times, when every time that we make things smarter, right? For example, because one of the fears about AI is, it allows us it's technology becoming smarter and smarter. And it sounds nice at first, right? Obviously. But then, there are certain things that we need to take into account. So every time that we like, advance, newer um newer issues, become opened up, right? So in this society, I feel like that would still happen, of course, because no one's perfect. but it'll be minimized because there will be a lot more intention behind it. So like, before it actually happens, there would have been a lot of thought going into it and probably, a lot more analyzing about the pros and cons and the possible impacts that the whatever product that you're working on has on society. Yeah. Uh, so why did this whole thing happen? So I realized that um while making this, I kind of realized that this kind of world is actually the kind of culture I would love to bring into the possible company that I might have in the future. Actually, you know what? I'm going to speak in affirmatives to manifest it because I really am trying to manifest it because I would love to go into the green energy field and, do something big with it and, be entrepreneurial about it. And in this company, this would be the kind of culture I would like to have and kind of allow the people that are working for this company to be able to feel like they can actually have um, a safe space to not just better themselves as like engineers or like whatever their role is, like not just better themselves career wise, but also personally become better people. And also kind of have like a girl's girl kind of um environment kind of. Oh, that was kind of a weird, like a weird way of explaining it, but like yeah, and it kind of made me realize that yeah, girls are the future of leadership because like if you're a girl's girl, you are the type of person that will hype your girls up. But also, when they do something that's probably not the wisest, you are still be are able to keep them accountable for their actions. So like that kind of society is what I would love to bring to real life. I know that I won't be able to bring it like globally, but I think that, I guess in an entrepreneurial sense, I would be able to bring that through my company. So, yeah, yeah, that's what I was kind of, um, that was kind of what I was working on yesterday and a little bit of today, and trying to like figure out how to make this happen. And I realized that in a way, this whole thing is kind of a manifesto of what kind of CEO that I want to be. And in my portfolio, I kind of talk about this in a section that I call, what did I call it? I called it my manifesto, the CEO origin story. Because in a way, that is what it is. Um, but it's just like it's finally been said out loud because I feel like these are certain things that I've thought of before, but just never really put two and two together. And I guess that this reset has allowed me to be able to do that because like it's kind of giving me a break from school, but at the same time, it's allowing me to be able to kind of move forward career-wise and personally, if that makes sense. But yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this, but also made you realize what kind of world we live in and what kind of world you may want to be a part of. And maybe, just maybe, if enough people listen to this, we could collectively make it happen. And, since that is kind of a main pillar with the society, community. So, if this reaches the right people, maybe we can make this a reality. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next episode.